All right, so now let's start talking about AOVs, and we've also been talking about LPEs, which are light path expressions. So all these things could be just summarized as render passes or render layers, we call them in a general sense. So the way you do this in Solaris or in USD is you have to create your render bars, and then you compile them to a render product, and then you just use it in your render, right? They are just, I guess at that point they're just ready. You can see these render settings in the standard tab has a products entry here, which we don't have any of that right now. So the first thing here, we're gonna start with a render bar node. Render bar node. This node is gonna create your AOV or LPE or anything you want to output. This is again a general purpose node, and you can see there is the entry here for configuring that. At first it seems a little bit weird. There is no like drop downs to select the specific ones as you might be used to in your render, like let me just select the diffuse indirect. Well, there's no drop down for this because as this is a generalized node, it doesn't know what you want really. There's drop downs here for Arnold, Renderman, etc., but they are just like processing on top of this object or this pass that you are requiring. You can see there's not much stuff. It's basically the filtering. Like in Redshift is the one that has more options, but it's basically filtering and options for the render passes. We're going to be setting up the way Arnold creates render passes, and then we will move to the other one. So this in this case, I'm going to call this beauty, and I'm not going to set up all of them. You can see in the final file, you can see all the ones that I created, and you can take some hints from there. But the beauty one in Arnold, there's support for LPE, which is I think the best way to unify everything. Sadly, the LPE I guess expression standard is not standard in all renderers. Karma has support for it, Renderman has support for it, Arnold has support for it, but for some of the I guess the syntax of the or how they interpret the LPEs don't work exactly the same. Hopefully USD will come with a standard on this, and we can all play together. For now, some things work with several renders, some don't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the AOVs, and also Redshift doesn't support LPEs yet, as far as I know. It only supports AOVs. So I'm gonna just set the options for each specific one separately. All right, so in the beauty one, this is gonna be for Arnold. So in the beauty, Arnold has support for LPEs, so I'm gonna use LPEs, which it's the one I like. So I'm just not gonna explain LPEs, the language, but the way you get color or the diffuse, basically what the beauty path is just getting all the color paths here to this, and then this data type means what color type is this planes. Basically, if you're gonna have RGB or just a value or some other values, and this is the format is gonna be written to in the file. So always select basically the same on these guys. So I'm gonna select. I always select the same, but you can also, if you don't want the full color or the full float, you can also select half, for example, if you want to have half of the precision. I'm just gonna go for color for this one because it's the final image. So now that should actually be the first pass here. And I did mention about the render scope here, and it's recommended by USD that you don't put this under anything. Render should be at the root, because that allows USD to just get the render properties really quickly instead of parsing the whole scene. So if you have a really big scene and you have this under, for example, scene or seem like this will make your the renderer or USD just parse the whole scene just to find the render properties, and that is not optimal. It's more optimal to just have it at the root, and it's gonna only parse the render tree there to get all the render properties or the render paths that you're gonna be outputting. So don't change this path, leave it at the render, and just leave everything on the /render. So you can see here it's creating that, and we have a beauty render bar here now, which is great. Now to see it, of course, we will have to go to Arnold, activate it, and you can see we have, I don't know where this depth is coming from because we haven't done any depth, but seems like we have it there. I just switched to these render settings to see the settings. You can see if I render from this node, it wasn't picking up the changes from here. So as soon as I view this, I pick the changes. So now here you can see we have the color here, which it seems like it's not picking it up, right? Like what's happening? Because this name here, it's the name of the path, and in this case we should be passing beauty here. If I middle click here, you can see it should be beauty, and I don't see it here. Well, what we need before we can see the AOVs or the LPs is we need a render product. So that's the next thing that we need to do here. Put this render product with this really nice icon. The render product is gonna say what AOVs or render bars you want to output here. So you can separate your files to have different AOVs if you want with this. So in this case we only have one, so we're gonna select it here, beauty, and then the product name is, you can name it whatever here. It's just the scripted name for you. Let's say passes or something like that if you want to. And then you can select the camera here. I think we were using camera 2. Let's just select camera 2 here, and you can set the resolution there. So let's switch here to camera 2 as well. So we have camera 2. Now we have the render product, and we selected this render bar in the product. Here in the render settings, we need now to select the render product here. You can see there's you can select several products if you want, not just one. We're gonna select this product here, and now if we select this guy and render, now look at that, we have now our beauty pass is there. Of course, the beauty pass looks exactly the same because the LPE is basically just giving us that, just the beauty pass, which we always need. And we have to select this, set this, because if you set one render bar, the beauty pass is basically going to be lost. So you need to actually declare that one. So I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to just copy this node. So I'm going to call this diffuse albedo. And the expression for that is going to be C bracket RD bracket A. You don't need there. And the color space is going to be the data type is going to be the same, but now that should work, right? If we'll see here, no, there isn't. If we restart the renderer, it's not there. Did I miss something? Yes, I have to pass it here to the render product, and I can do that. And now I have two. And now here we have the beauty, and we have the albedo pass. There we go. Pretty cool. But I don't like this because we're gonna have a lot of render bars here, and it might get a little bit out of hand to just select each one by hand. So what I do is I just set this where the name is, I just put an asterisk, so it gets me everything from that path. So Solaris accepts this asterisk and other characters to have this kind of selective, get this kind of wildcard thing to select different objects. In this case, all these bars here. So now when we add more here, we're not going to be needing to select them here because they're going to include all of them. If you don't want that because you need a specific product, well, you have to select them manually. In this case, we want all of them, and we have those two there. So let's set another one. I'm again, you can copy it or just stop it. I'm gonna stop Arnold. I'm gonna do this specular as well, specular, and the specular is also gonna be this, but the specular is gonna be just, you can also say, well, instead of color, float tree, because we don't need color for the specular, do we? Oh no, we do. You can also set it to half tree, for example, which is half the precision. You might not need as much data in that channel, or it's up to you. I'm just showing you that you have the options there. That's the expression you need for that, and then of course that's going to be included. If we render with Arnold again, it should be there, specular, and you can see now we have the specular there, which is great. You can also do other things, like for example things that are not specifically LPEs, like for example the normals. The normal can just be let's put it into a float tree, and the normal can just be the N, and the N is going to be in raw, because it's just basically mean just send this directly to the renderer, don't process it, and the renderer might or might not understand that. So in this case, Arnold, we need to select this. You can see Arnold understands the normal and it renders the normals on the scene there. Another good one to have here will be, let's say, the transmission, which is going to be mostly this glass transmission, and the transmission means the light transmission. So we can say this transmission, and this is going to be another LPE. Like this, and this is going to be, let's just put it as color as well. And the render is restarting there, so we can just say this is, the transmission is already there, but it doesn't seem to be giving me what it should be giving me. That's normal transmission. There we go. It was just a refresh. So you can see now we're getting just the transmission of the light there through that glass and the water there, or the tequila there, which is great. Awesome. So that's how you would do this. And when you render for Arnold, you would use this one. Let's call this Arnold out. It's going to be our Arnold output. And when you use this, we just change this to Arnold. Change the render path here. Render settings. Here, the output image, you put the path to the output that you want to output, and then you just render. And you should render with Arnold with this passes included. Of course, you would render to an EXR for that. All right, so let's move on to doing now something else. For example, for Karma. For Karma, we don't really need these passes because Karma already kind of has that system embedded. So I'm going to plug Karma over here. You can see if I switch to Karma now, and I can select this guy. This guy is using camera 1. You can see even it says camera 2 here. Even if it says camera 2 here, Karma has camera 1 set here. So it's rendering camera 1. So Karma also, you can see already has some of the render outputs selected. And those come from the images. You can see there are some selected here, and also here on this, under this ray, there's also camera, UV, etc. So you can actually just do this, and you can see this should be the depth, the diffuse, the closing reflections, the normals, the UV, which I don't think it's right. This is kind of by phase UVs. We can fix it by adding a new one here. You can see you can add extra ones, and let's fix that actually. So you can actually say, let's turn that off, because that's not what I would expect for UVs, because UVs are sometimes are useful to have to retexture stuff in compositing. And you can just say as a raw statement here, you can just say the ST there instead of the UV. And that actually gives me what I would expect as UVs. And you can see that, and actually would expect it to be color. like this. And that's what I would expect for UVs. And I know these are the UVs of my objects. So that's what I would actually expect, not per face UVs. So you can see you can actually add more render bars to Karma if you need to, outside of the ones that are predefined here, which you can just activate and just have them here automatically with Karma. And Karma is not doing anything different here. It's just packing what we just saw into one. Now you can see there's the transmission as well here, the glossy transmissions. It's there. It's the same thing. What we just saw with Arnold, it's basically the same thing the Karma is doing. If you go inside of here, you can see it's creating a Karma render properties node and has the USD render node here. Inside of here, you can see it's exactly what we've been doing. We have some render bars here, or some additional render bars. If we go inside this node, you can see this is just exactly what we were doing. Just as the node that is just setting the render bars, and they're just switching it if you want that or not. It's exactly what we did. Exactly, some LPEs here. And then at this level, you can see there's the render product we created, which has all those render bars there. And then we have the render settings we also created, and then an output. So basically, it's just packing this setup that we did here into one single node, and that's exactly what it is, and exactly what it's doing, and it's exactly what Renderman is doing as well. You can see if we go, this is exactly the same thing as Karma, exactly the same thing, but they're just setting their own settings. You can see there's a bunch of stuff here in Renderman as well. We are not gonna see any output on Renderman because they are available here, and you can just go and select whatever you want here, but they are not working at the moment. There should be a fix soon for this, and if that happens at any time that they have it working, I will just make a video updating on that. But sadly for now, we can't get the outputs either on the viewport or in the render output from Renderman. But it seems to be just a little glitch on their part because everything else is set up correctly, and sometimes it kind of works. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do here before we leave is it's setting up Redshift and how you get those passes with Redshift. So what I'm going to do is just create another a separate pass here, or a separate branch for this Redshift. So I'm going to create a render bar, and this render bar is going to be the beauty. So you should always start with the beauty. Like I mentioned, Redshift, I don't think it supports LPEs yet. So they have their own keywords for getting the AOVs out of this. So for example, for the beauty, I'm going to call this beauty pass. Unless I'm going to get this one, but it's fine if we get that one. Actually, I'm going to leave it as it was. So just like that. So for getting the beauty, we have this syntax RS for Redshift, and then we type beauty. And that's what you need. That's it. But also we need, of course, we need the render product and the render settings and the output as well. So I'm going to copy these nodes here. I'm going to create those nodes there. This is basically like the always needed nodes. And then here you're going to say exactly the same thing because the path is going to be the same. Because when we are going to render this branch, only this branch is going to exist, not any of this. So we can actually leave that as it is. We can just change this to say to use the render product too. So we actually set that, not that one. And we can set whatever camera we want to use here, and that's it. Render settings to here as well. So we're using this one. And if we now check Redshift, you can see here's Redshift, and we have the beauty pass, and you can see this light is visible in the viewport. So maybe if we don't want it, we can just set some of those properties on the light. This is the key light. So for the Redshift here, if we go here, we have Redshift. we had a visible property. We can turn that off, and that light's not going to be visible anymore. You can see that there it is. Also, this top light or this guacamole light that I added, you can see it's very harsh on Redshift. So Redshift, I'm just going to disable it for now, so we don't have this harsh light there. And we're gonna set some of the other render bars. I'm gonna stop this, and actually go to render settings and activate some of the Redshift properties. In this case, global illumination, which has some really nice global illumination stuff here in Redshift. I'm gonna turn this on. I'm gonna set this to brute force and irradiance points cloud, and that will give us now a really nice global illumination on the scene. All right, so what I want is actually to maybe grab that illumination on a pass, right? So let's just turn this off. Make sure we are using that, and we should, because there's no other one actually. So let's make another pass here, and that's gonna be called GI. Forgetting the GI, we just say RS colon GI, and this is gonna be a color. Actually, this beauty also should be a color. Not sure why I had it like that. Should be color, and the GI will be that. And let's just see that and set some other AOVs. Now you can see we have the GI in a pass. If we need to tweak that, we can. Cool. In Redshift calls the albedo, just calls it diffuse filter. So let's just do that, diffuse filter. And for that, we just say RS diffuse filter like this. And you can see this is the diffuse filter. There we go, just flat. If we want to composite this and add all the passes, light passes on top of this, this is your base. Great. I'm gonna set some passes for lights, which are actually gonna be really useful. Again, there are more passes that I set up in the final file if you want to check that out. I'm gonna extract some lights, so I'm gonna call this top light, and let's just, so this is gonna use the diffuse actually, and we're gonna set a property to, and this is actually gonna be an output of float and data type of float. And the way you're gonna get the light here is, if we go back to the light here, there is a property in Redshift. Here, the Redshift, there is a light group property. We can just name it. The name is gonna be whatever you want, but it has to match. So I'm gonna name the other ones as well. This is gonna be the key light. So I want to extract the lights and get them for me maybe tweak at render time. I mean in compositing actually. So for this we have we set this to our S diffuse, and then here in Redshift light groups here we turn this on, and then we put the light group that we want to include in this pass. So anything that this light is contributing to the scene, we're gonna have in this pass. So let's do the same for the other ones, for the key and for the dome. And then we only need to change the light group here, key and dome, like that. And if we see this in Redshift now, we can see we have our beauty, we have the albedo, we have the dome light. You can see this is the contribution of the dome light. We have the GI, we have the key light. See, it's just the light from the key light, and the top light. See, that's the contribution of the top light. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Of course, you can have more AOVs. I guess the last one I'm gonna set here, it's maybe the shadows, which would be really It's always really useful to have the shadows. And it's exactly the same thing. I'm gonna remove this because we're not gonna use a light group for this. It's gonna be just RS shadows, and it's gonna be a float because shadows are just one color most of the time. I don't think we're gonna have color shadows, but we can. I guess we can just use color for that. Actually, there's no color here. Might be filtering that. So the shadows, we switch here to Redshift, and we switch to shadows. We have the shadows there. So there we go. That's pretty cool. All right, so that's gonna be it for AOVs and LPEs render passes in Solaris.